Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving deep into The Last Bear. It's a book by Hannah Gold, and let me tell you, it's really grabbed people's attention. We've gathered quite a bit of material on it, reviews from different angles, summaries that give you the whole story arc, even some background on the author herself, so we've got all the bases covered, I think.
Yes, absolutely. A really rich collection of sources we've got here. We've tried to distill it all down so you can really get a feel for this book, even if you haven't actually read it.
Yeah.
The main plot, the important ideas it brings up, all that.
Exactly. We're going to unpack the whole thing for you. The adventure at the heart of it, the characters that make it tick, the themes, those big ideas that really make you think. Okay, so let's jump right in. Let's start with the adventure itself. The story opens with a young girl, 11 years old, named April Wood. She's traveling to Bear Island, which is way up in the Arctic Circle. It's super remote. She's going to be there for 6 months with her dad, who's a scientist.
And right off the bat, there's this really intriguing premise. She's told there are no polar bears on Bear Island. None. And the reason they give her is that, well, the ice is melting because of global warming.
Yeah.
So, that sets the stage with this very real-world issue right from the beginning.
But then, surprise, surprise, right. April's exploring the island thinking it's totally bear-free when suddenly she comes face-to-face with a polar bear. And not just any polar bear. This one is alone, he's clearly hungry, he's hurt, and get this, his paw is trapped in a piece of plastic. I mean, talk about a powerful image, this iconic animal of the Arctic, and he's been injured by something humans just carelessly tossed away.
It's really striking, isn't it? And that one moment is like the catalyst for the whole story. It immediately makes you question what April's been told and makes you realize there's a lot more to this situation than meets the eye.
So from this unexpected meeting, something amazing starts to happen. April, showing so much compassion, she helps the bear, she gets that plastic off his paw, and she even starts sharing her food with him. She gives him the very straightforward name Bear, although in one of the reviews it mentions he might also be called Nonuk, which is an Inuit name for polar bear. That kind of adds another layer to it, don't you think?
It does, yeah. And if you think about who this book is really for, kids, that budding friendship between April and Bear is what really pulls you in emotionally.
Yeah.
It helps them relate to the bear's vulnerability, on a personal level, not just as part of some big environmental problem.
Given that it's a story for younger readers, what sort of understanding of friendship do you think the author is trying to create through this unusual pairing? That's a great question. I think it's about showing that compassion can exist in the most unexpected places, that you can find connection and understanding even when there are huge differences between you. As April spends more time with Bear, she starts to understand why he's all alone. And it's not just about the lack of food because of the melting ice. He's been separated from his natural home, which is Svalbard, a place where other polar bears live. So Bear's personal struggle becomes tied to this much bigger problem, this crisis of habitat loss caused by climate change.
And that realization is a turning point for April. She goes from just feeling sorry for Bear to feeling like she has to do something, like it's her responsibility to help him.
And that feeling of responsibility leads her to make a really incredibly brave decision. This young girl decides she's going to take this huge polar bear all the way to Svalbard herself. And she's going to do it in an old boat that she fixes up on her own. I mean, that's just amazing, the courage and determination she has, especially for someone her age. It's impossible not to admire her for that. Looking at the sources we have, did any of the reviews kind of question whether an 11-year-old could really pull that off, or did they focus more on what her actions represent?
It seems like they mostly focus on the symbolism.
Yeah.
Sure, the journey is fantastical. It couldn't happen in real life. But it really underlines how much effort and dedication it takes to tackle environmental problems. It's like saying, even if something seems impossible, you can at least try if you really believe in it.
Right, right. And their journey, of course, is not exactly smooth sailing. The sources describe it as being really tough. Like, at one point, they get caught in this terrifying storm with massive waves. It really brings home the danger they're in and how far April is willing to go to help Bear.
And going through those dangers together, it definitely strengthens their bond. They're facing these challenges as a team, And finally, against all odds, they're rescued. And they make it to Svalbard, which is Bear's real home. Of course, it's a bittersweet moment because April has to say goodbye to her friend.
It is, but that bittersweet ending is so important. It acknowledges that there's sadness there, but it also provides a sense of closure. The bear is back where he belongs, and it's all thanks to April's incredible actions. So let's talk a bit more about the characters themselves. April Wood, we know she's around 11 years old. The sources consistently describe her as brave, caring, really determined. And she's also portrayed as a sweet and curious kid. What do you think it is about her background that shapes those qualities?
Well, one thing that really stands out is that she's lost her mom. That's obviously had a huge impact on her, and it's affected her relationship with her father. She feels lonely sometimes. And her father, he's been so wrapped up in his work and his own grief. So there's a lot of emotional depth to her character.
Absolutely. And the way she acts throughout the story shows incredible resilience and empathy. As one of the sources pointed out, she's a great example of how young people can be incredibly brave and capable of making a real difference in the world. And then there's Bear, or maybe Nanook, as we've discussed. When we first meet him, he's alone, he's hungry, he's injured. But as the story unfolds, he almost becomes like a character with his own feelings and needs. You really feel for him.
I agree. It's interesting how the story subtly gives him a personality, which makes it easier for readers to connect with what he's going through on an emotional level. His
Right.
loneliness, his hunger, they're the direct result of losing his habitat. It's so powerful. And of course, we can't forget about April's dad. He's a scientist totally immersed in studying weather patterns and the effects of climate change in the Arctic. At first, he comes across as emotionally distant. He's still dealing with the loss of his wife, and he's very focused on his research.
Yeah, and that distance between him and April really contrasts with how close she's becoming to the bear. It shows how grief can affect people in different ways, and how it can sometimes create a gap between us and those we love. But over the course of the story, his character changes in a big way.
He does, yeah. As the story goes on, his relationship with April starts to heal. It gets stronger. He sees how brave she is, how much she cares, especially for Bear. And in a really moving turn of events, he actually decides to change his career path. He wants to focus more on doing something directly to help the environment.
That shift in his character is so powerful. It shows that even adults who are going through their own struggles can be inspired by young people. Seeing what April does, witnessing the real impact of environmental problems, it changes him. Okay, so let's try to pin down some of the really important takeaways from The Last Bear. What are the themes that really stick with you?
Well, at the very core of it, I think it's a story about the power of friendship. The bond that forms between April and Bear, it goes beyond the usual human-animal connection. It's about trust, empathy, understanding, even though they're so different. And of course, you can't talk about this book without talking about its environmental message. It directly addresses the impact of climate change in the Arctic, specifically how melting ice is devastating for polar bears, how it threatens their very survival. The book makes this global crisis personal by telling Bear's story. We know climate change is central to the story, but do any of the sources suggest that it offers any unique perspective on it, or any solutions, even small-scale ones?
That's a great point. While the book mainly focuses on raising awareness and making people care, April's actions do give a sense of hope. It's the idea that individuals can make a difference, even when the problem seems huge. Another big theme is courage and determination. April's bravery in approaching a polar bear, which is naturally a dangerous animal, and then becoming his friend, that's amazing in itself. But then she goes even further. She's determined to help him, even though there are so many obstacles. It's incredibly inspiring, and it sends a strong message about not giving up on what you believe in.
And that ties into the theme of individual impact. April's just one girl, but what she does sets off a whole chain of events that lead to change. She doesn't just help Bear. She inspires her father to rethink his work and dedicate himself to protecting the environment. It really emphasizes that no action is too small when it comes to saving our planet. The book also touches on some really sensitive topics like grief and loss. Both April and her father are dealing with the pain of losing April's mom. And the story gently shows how they each cope with that grief and how their shared experience, especially April's adventure with Bear, helps them heal and strengthen their relationship. It's a reminder of how important family and connection are during tough times.
I think the way those personal themes are woven together with the global ones is one of the book's biggest strengths. It makes the environmental message more accessible and engaging, especially for young readers, but it also tells a heartwarming story about family and friendship and how those bonds can endure. Now, let's shift gears and talk about the author Hannah Gold. She's British, and you can really see her passion for nature shining through in her writing. The Last Bear wasn't just any book for her, it was her first novel for middle grade readers, and it was a smash hit right out of the gate.
It really was. It won some major awards, like the Waterstones Children's Book Prize and the Blue Peter Book Award, both in 2022. That tells you something about how much it resonated with people. And her dedication to the planet goes beyond writing. She's an ambassador for the Whale and Dolphin Conservation Charity, which shows how committed she is to protecting animals and their habitats. And The Last Bear isn't the only story she's told about nature. She's also written The Lost Whale, which won awards too, Finding Bear, which is a sequel to The Last Bear, and Turtle Moon. Oh, and I should mention, her books often have these beautiful illustrations by Levi Pinfold. They add a whole other dimension to her storytelling.
It's clear that her love for nature and her desire to make people aware of these critical environmental issues are what drives her writing. So, as you listen to all of this, no matter who you are or whether you usually read children's books, what do you think you can take away from The Last Bear?
Well, the themes are really universal, aren't they? The importance of friendship, having the courage to face your fears, the idea that one person can actually make a difference. These are all things everyone can relate to. And it's the way the book blends those personal, emotional elements, like April's loneliness, her determination, her relationship with her father, with these big global issues like climate change, that makes it so powerful. It never feels preachy. It just feels real. And if you're someone who enjoys stories about the connection between humans and animals, stories set in beautiful natural environments, then The Last Bear is definitely worth checking out. It's both an exciting adventure and a really thoughtful introduction to these crucial environmental concepts.
If our deep dive has got you thinking about other books along similar lines, there are quite a few out there that touch on these same themes. Some that our sources mention are Pax, A Wolf Called Wander, Hoot, and of course Hannah Gold's own The Lost Whale and the sequel Finding Bear. They all explore the natural world, the bonds between different species, and the challenges of protecting the environment, just like The Last Bear does.
And often, they offer different perspectives on those themes, which can broaden your understanding of how interconnected everything is.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into The Last Bear, we've journeyed through this incredible story of April and her unique friendship with a polar bear in the Arctic. We've talked about the powerful themes of friendship, taking responsibility for the environment, and the really inspiring message that even small actions can have a big impact.
In the end, the book is both a captivating adventure, especially for young readers, and a really thought-provoking look at these vital environmental issues that affect all of us.
And with that in mind, here's something to consider as you go about your day. Think about the choices you make, even the small ones. In what ways might those choices be part of a bigger story, a story about the future of our planet? Maybe it's worth reflecting on the strength we find in unexpected connections and the courage it takes to act on what we believe in, even when the odds seem stacked against us. Keep seeking out stories that weave together personal journeys with those crucial global themes, because those are the stories that can really make a difference.